Pablo Mastroeni on the pod. An absolute icon of the game, a legend in every sense of the word, and a definite need to listen. The guy is magic. I love him. I think that he is one of the best minds in the game because he looks at things in a completely different way than most. He's certainly a soccer mind, but also a philosopher and a thinker and a unique perspective of where those worlds combined. We're lucky to have him.
What's the toughest part about being a journeyman in a new city?
Well, Gordo, you know this as well as I do. Being a journeyman in a new city or a city that you're staying in is always difficult. The uncertainty of the future. Are you going to stay? Are you going to go somewhere else? Back in 2020 with Nashville SC, when we had a brand new team, everyone coming to a new city, there was only one person that we trusted to get our real estate needs done, and that's Erin Mishu with Fikes Realty Group. She made everything perfect, flawless, seamless. We had absolutely no issues getting into our house here in Nashville, and all my teammates felt the same way. You can check Erin out at majorleague-realestate.com. There he is.
Talking trash already.
We figured it out. You were connecting to audio there for about 10 minutes.
I was snooping, dude. But you guys forgot that Gordo's mustache it speaks in code, man. I can hear everything.
Hey, listen, dude. Pops.
I can hear everything.
You know I love the Galaxy. And you know my kids love the Galaxy. But when you were playing them the other night, I could not help from rooting for my boy. Why do you bring that out of me and everyone else? And my son goes, you know, little Jack that you met?
Yeah.
He goes, hey, I met that guy. And he signed like some players. I'm like, it's like showing the players. I'm like, what guy? Like where? I thought he was talking about Zach. And then it finally scans to you. And he's like, that guy. I'm like, oh, Pops.
I just saw this thing because we do this thing. It's called Hablo con Pablo. And I'm just realizing that I have a circle in the back of my head, dude. I'm getting so old. There's a balding spot. And I just saw it for the first time in my life.
Stress, buddy.
It's happening, dude.
Stress.
It's happening.
It's happening, Pobs. I wanted to start with you. Arguably, you know, you're in the Gallery of Honor for the Colorado Rapids. Actually, let me throw this to Dax and Gordo. Do you guys know the most successful team in Colorado Rapids history?
Good question.
Well, yeah.
Not 2010.
It's definitely 2010.
It's not 2010.
It is because they won an MLS Cup, but
No, it's not. It's the 2006-2007 back-to-back Reserve League champs team. That is the Colorado Rapids, which I was a part of, and I hosted both of those cups. Pobs, were you drunk when you did it? Because everyone was drunk when they played in that. Absolutely. Okay. No, I was not, dude. I was not. I took those games very seriously.
Definitely hungover.
Definitely hungover.
I'll just share a story with Gordo now. Interview me. I got better stories.
This is what you're here for. We just want you to tell stories.
Garden comes in and he's it's like his first week with the team. Or it's got to be his first couple months, maybe. I forget exactly the time frame, but he was a newbie, just cutting his teeth. And, you know, he's now experiencing life as a professional athlete and like going out after games and like, oh, maybe Tuesday night with Wednesday practice off. And I think he went out, he must have gone out like a Wednesday night, whatever. Thursday we come back and there's like just a rondo, you know, pre-practice rondo. And Gargs, I mean, he is just like spinning circles, falling over the ball. He's got grass on his face. I mean, he's in the middle the whole time.
Was this 2012 or 2014?
I don't know. First year.
Oh, okay.
Shut up, Gordo.
Keep going.
And and for me, I'm like, listen, this guy's gonna do well because he can, you know, he's willing at least to go out on a Wednesday night, but he's also willing to, you know, show up on Thursday. But man, he just got tossed around in the middle and he just couldn't get out of the middle and he just kept falling everywhere. And then I come to find out that he just went on a bender the night before. And I said, listen, man, I really rate your desire to go out and enjoy yourself. I said, but man, this is a cutthroat business and you're going to have to find a better balance than what I saw today. And I guess it worked out. I don't know necessarily it was the talk, is probably your tolerance improved over the course of years.
Yeah.
I think it was something that Gordo said to me, to some of the young guys in Chicago. If you want to be a man at night, you got to be a man in the morning.
There you go. That's great.
That's a good one. A little anecdote I will add to that story.
Yeah, you do it. And then I got one.
The head coach, Fernando Clavijo, at the time was also participating in the rondo. And I think I left my feet like 3 different times because at the time I was not thrilled with my position on the team. Oh my God. Pops after practice, because Pops was not participating in practice. Pops was all the first team guys had their joggers, their runners on. So they go for like, the 9-minute shuffle around the fields while the rest of us actually had to train. And I was hungover as a donkey. And Pops pulls me over and puts his arm around me. He's like, yo, man, you got to let us know if you're going to look like that in training. We can help you out. I didn't think I was that bad.
You never do.
He's like, no, you were worse than
you
were worse than that. I was like, okay, thank you.
You never do, because it's all a blur.
I'll tell you what, man. But that was, I feel like that was one of the early moments of our friendship, Pops. And we've talked an awful lot about kind of the effect that you have on locker rooms and former teammates, and, as a captain, as a head coach, as just a teammate in a lot of ways too. You have an incredible ability about you that brings a group in. And we wanted to talk about the success that you're having this year, because atop the Western Conference is pretty impressive for a Real Salt Lake team that, to be fair and no disrespect, I don't think a lot of people would have pegged Real Salt Lake to be the front runner for the Western Conference at this point in the season. Is there one thing that you can point to from last year to this year that you're like, okay, this is where the switch was turned and why we're in this position today?
Yeah, I wish it was one thing. I think like even results of games, how many variables go into it, right? Referees, the win, hitting the post and going out versus hitting the post and going in. I think there's so many variables. Some of the stuff that is like in your face, I think everyone that is here this year really wants to be here. And I think we had an influential player last year that really played more for himself than the group. And when you have an influential player on the team that is not all in, it's so easy to get the team divided. I would say that's one thing. And then the other part, which is really interesting, and I don't think I would have said this, but we've completely changed the staff. And so what that kind of forced was some new voices, which after a couple of years, and you guys have all been in locker rooms and understand, like, it's the same. I mean, how many, like every coach is who he is, right? So whether it's, Bruce Arena and it's like, it's the same voice over and over. And change is really good, but change is very difficult. And so this year I was, I'm always reading books, man. And I'm always like, yeah, that's a great idea. Surrender, like that's awesome. I got to practice a surrender, but we want to practice it when it's not really not life threatening, but it's like, when you can no longer affect it, like we want to surrender, like, but not really, like quasi surrender. And so this year, they moved my staff out, and I'm like, dude, as a leader of this group, I feel like I'm the loser here, not the guys that are leaving, but me as the captain of the staff. And after having a lot of conversations with with a lot of people, it was like, well, listen, if a gust of wind blows, 3 guys are walking on a bridge and a gust of wind blows three guys off, are you going to jump in with them? Is that like, are you a martyr? Or are you trying to continue to grow your trade whilst the universe is giving you this opportunity? Like, who are you to decide, like, just carry on? But now you have to think about it differently. And at that point, I surrendered. It was an incredible moment. I remember it like it was like, it was so palpable. And I said, you know what? I'm going to let the universe decide how we go. What I need to do is just change my mindset and be very positive about this. And so immediately I said, we're going to get some coaches that are young, up and coming, cutting edge guys that know stuff that I don't, or that are working with stuff that I haven't been privy to because I haven't gone on a coaching trip in like 4 or 5 years. And these guys are like traveling the world. And so that was the first thing I said. And the next part was, well, if we're going to bring in all these new coaches, then I'm going to manage the group differently. I'm going to be more of a manager / coach. Like, this is the game model we want. This is the style of play we want. And this is what you're tasked with, the offense. This is what you're tasked with defensively. And they both have assistant coaches as well. And this thing has been humming. Mm-hmm. I mean, it has been like amazing. And what's really been interesting is there's been moments along the way where the players are like, Pablo, we want you on the field more. And of course, because it's comfort. And I guess my greatest strength is also my greatest weakness, right? So it's like, yeah, it's comforting because I'm always positive and I'm always, don't worry about it. But these guys are like, hey, listen, and you just, you don't want that type of, friction. So,
right.
So it's been amazing, man. It's been amazing. And I wouldn't have had this opportunity. I wouldn't be enjoying the moment unless I surrendered, because I would have been fighting everything along the way. I would have been stepping into sessions and being like, no, guys, this is how I want it. And no, right. But it completely surrendered to them, giving them the opportunity to do their jam. And all the coaches are doing great work. The players are humming. We got a new fitness coach. And so it's part culture. It's part the change. And it's removing, a player from the group that wasn't all bought in. And those are the macro
right.
variables.
Are you surprised that the roster, that is, I mean, for the most part, pretty similar, right, to last year?
Yep.
Are you surprised that they took to the new voices in the new direction as quickly as they seemingly have?
Again, I think because I am the one common theme, I think if I treat the coaches with the respect, with like, they see that I'm all in, the mm-hmm. likelihood is that they're going to follow. If there was resistance, if there was like, no, stop, no, and I'm overstepping, and then they'd probably more than likely it wouldn't work, So I think, again, as a captain in the locker room, as a coach on the field, the onus is on you to lead by example, not what you say, but it's what you do. And I think a lot of that has allowed us, because again, they pulled me aside and they're like, yeah, we want you on the field a little bit more. I'm like, listen, that was last year. We were good last year. We want to be great. So we got to do something different, and the same thing with like the fitness stuff. We do a submax speed test every Tuesday when we get back from our game at the weekend. And we do pre-activation in the weight room before we go out. And so the guys, just a couple weeks ago, right? Things are humming. The guys' output this year from a physical perspective has improved by like 30%. And our team last year, if there's one thing, run for days. There's no,
for sure.
And now we're improving it by 30%. So I said to the guys, we brought them in, all the senior guys, because right, Dax, all the senior guys were like, well, Pablo, why are we doing this? And I said, and I was like, they're like, because they asked the fitness coaches, and they're like, well, Pablo wants to get, heart rate conditions, and they said some science stuff. And I said, that's what they think. That's not why we do this. I said, we do this on Tuesday because when you hear that first beat and you don't want to do it and you still get through it and do great, that's what's separating us from everyone else, is doing shit we don't like to do. It's not doing the stuff. And I keep saying to the guys, you want broccoli or ice cream? You're going to pick ice cream every day of the week, like every other human being will. It's the broccoli that makes you great, not the ice cream. And I said, so when you hear that first beep, you're ready to fucking work. And if you guys want to be average, let's cut this shit out. So am I allowed to cuss on this thing?
Yeah, why not?
Encouraged.
Pablo Mastroeni, why not?
If you want to be average, let's do things that are comfortable.
Yeah.
Let's do things that are comfortable. But you want to be great? We haven't been great here, dude. We want to be great. We got to do things differently.
That's amazing, dude. I just want to say, this is what is special about you, and I'll tell you, is your willingness to change, right, and to grow. You have a growth mindset, and it's never ever. Ever since I've known you for a long time. I've gotten to know you better over the years. And it's always, every time I talk to you on the phone, they're 30, 45 minutes because you're like, look at this book. And then you're listening to me about my struggles and you're bringing it in. But I'll just say, dude, like even from our perspective, like mine and Garg's and everybody that cares about you as a person, we saw how great you did with, let's just be honest, your roster in comparison to, in your budget in comparison to the league is typically low, right? and what you've been able to do, we're always kind of behind you, right? And then when they fired your staff, well, I felt emotional about it. And I started feeling like the victim for you, like giving you the victim mentality. It's like, no, Pablo, no, you can't do that to our guy, you know? And I wanted to fight and be pissed and like feel sad for you. And you've just taken it, and the surrender message, dude, is so powerful. Like that can really fit in everybody's life, not just yours, you know, and you're in a high pressure, like we're all dealing with stuff that we are beating our heads against a brick wall. And if we just surrender a little bit and change our mindset, I think a lot of people would benefit from it, right? And that's why I love talking to you, dude. It's always about the universe with you.
It is, man. Like they say, the humans have preferences, right? And our preferences always are derived from our past, right? So we like certain things. And so we stay in this comfort zone because it feels comfortable. And we prefer this. But until you walk through pain and completely surrender to all the forces of the universe, again, think about all the people, all the decisions that are made by 8 billion people, gravity, every force that exists. And then it leads you to this moment. And I've just, one of the books that I read that changed my life was A Surrender Experiment, where this guy goes on this jolly and says yes to everything the universe throws at him. And this is my first foray into it in like real life terms. I've done little surrenders, but again, little ones. But this was the real like life-changing one that I was like, this is amazing, because I was vulnerable. I accepted it. I changed my mindset, and I couldn't imagine it not happening. And so what they say is like, once you walk through the pain and step out your comfort zone, there's endless possibilities that lie beyond. Mm-hmm. But you can only walk through the pain to get to that. Mm-hmm. Because if not, you just go to the comfort zone and you turn around and walk back, because again, preferences, the known, the past. And so then we become prisoners of our past. And so again, soccer for me is the greatest metaphor for life. And everything that I want to get better at in life is the same thing I want to get better at in football. And it really comes down to relationships, right? And becoming a better listener instead of having all the answers. And it's really interesting because we have young coaches that have some great ideas, but now they're applying it to guys with big time egos. And so what worked maybe with the captive audience in the USL isn't necessarily going to translate. And they're learning about how to surrender and how it's not always, and life is more gray than anything else. And so we're all learning together, man. And I'm just having a blast, man.
Pablo, hearing you talk about this type of stuff, it gets me fired up, because I agree with so much of what you're saying. And I feel like it was like Nagelsmann, maybe. I don't know how much you follow like soccer outside of MLS or other coaches or other leagues, but I feel like it was Nagelsmann that was like, you know what coaching is? It's like, 20% tactics, but 80% how you just relate to your players and how you can get the best out of them. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much the X's and O's. Sure, you have to have a framework, and you have to have an ethos and a philosophy and a belief, but how I connect with my players, that is what's going to get me the most out of them. Right. Your output. Right. And so for me, it's just brilliant to hear you talk about this different stuff. And I had an idea, and you got to be the first coach to do the Aaron Rodgers this offseason. I need you to like go on like a retreat, take some magic mushrooms, be secluded in darkness for 48 hours. And once you come out of it, I feel like you're going to be unstoppable, dude. You're going to be like Thanos coming out of it. You're going to be like the wizard, dude. And so anyways, when you do that, we want to be the first to ask you about that experience.
I'd love to. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are, experimenting with ayahuasca and with a shaman. I think that'd be interesting.
Would you do that, Pablo?
I think I'm getting closer, man. I think as a young kid, I was very adventuresome, for lack of a better term. And I think at that point in my life, being naive was brilliant, right? Because you had no idea of consequences. Now, as you get older, you're just laden with these, like now you think about, okay, if I do this, these are the consequences. But I think I'm in a good place. I think I'm in a good place to be able to maybe try some of that. Maybe, and I don't know if it's during my coaching career or after.
I meant more in the sense, the reason I wouldn't do it, and I was adventuresome early too, if that's where we're going. But I have so much like dug in a grave that I would be scared to come out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't know. I think you've unpacked a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I did that through therapy. I was seeing a therapist for quite some time, and I did some EMDR, I think it's called, where it's basically like a bit of hypnosis and a guided kind of meditation type thing. Man, I woke up from that thing like hysterically crying, and she said I was like that for an hour and a half, and I'm thinking to myself, hour and a half? And you sat in this room for an hour and a half? I mean, she's handing me, I had tissues everywhere, and I'm just waking up like from surgery. It felt like waking up from surgery.
That's going through pain, right? Like that's going through pain.
Yeah, exactly.
You get to a higher level of understanding of what you want to be about as a person.
Exactly. That's
it's cool because like I wasn't on the pod. I don't know if you're a listener, Pobs, but I've
heard a few of them. The guy, by the way, the coaches are big fans. They're like, no way, and I'm like, yeah, these guys, and they're like, oh,
I appreciate it, man.
That pod.
But just talking about this, it's very in line with I think maybe the new age athlete, right, and the new age of sports, which is very mental health focused, right. Mm-hmm. And we had Omar on earlier, and I was bummed because I missed that one, but he was talking about his mental health and how important it was for him to talk to someone and you know how close he was to the edge of thinking bad thoughts and how other people had influenced his life so much to help him come out of that. And it sounds to me like, you know, that is exactly what you went through. And I don't know, do you think if you would have had that understanding and that level of, I think, vulnerability as a player, you would have maybe been a better player, or you would have been a different player? Or do you think now it's just shaped you more as a coach?
That's a great question.
That is a good question, Dax. That's surprising from you.
Thanks, buddy.
I definitely think it's shaped my perspective as a coach. And because I had a lot of trauma from a really young age, so I was 4 years old and I saw my younger brother who was dead. He died of SIDS. And so my mom's carrying around her baby who's blue, and I'm 4 years old, and I don't understand what's going on, but my parents are going nuts and they're screaming and there's fire. So anyways, my whole world from the age of 4 was like death was lurking around every corner. And so I didn't know that was my thing. And so when I went into my therapist, she said, the way you perceive the world, I can't believe you're a contributing member of society. She says, I have so many people that come in here with 1/1,000,000th of what you've experienced and can't get out of their house. And so I was thinking to myself, oh, that's kind of weird. And she's like, your perspective of life is very, very dark. And it was because it was basically, you know, trauma from a really young age. So to answer your question, so the way soccer worked in this whole thing for me was when I was out on the field, I had no fear. And my game was almost reckless, you know.
Don't worry, buddy. My ankles felt it every time I played you. It was very painful. I get it.
You know what I mean? But then off the field, I was just like, I lived a very fearful life. But in between those lines, it was like there was no fear in the world. And so, like, I don't think it would have affected my playing game as much. But now having to manage human beings, it's given me the ability to see players that aren't functioning 100%. And oftentimes coaches will be like, oh, you're not working out as much, or you're not focused. And then so then I always say, okay, if they're not focused, what's going on beyond them? And then I'll call them in and ask them, hey, is there anything going on outside that I can help you with, or we can help you with? And there's always something there. And so it's broadened my perspective. Again, when we talk about player management and how 20% of it is tactics, the player is going to improve incrementally over the course of years. But how do you get the most out of players is, I think, creating an environment that is psychologically safe for them to speak openly and honestly about what is going on in their lives. And there's a couple players in the group that are going through some tough times. And I feel that we do a really good job as a staff in catering to those needs, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we all have our struggles. And if we can't empathize with these young men now, because the game's gotten so young, that have so much responsibility at such a young age, making so much money, to be able to lend a hand and be mentors for them, then I think this is a very fruitless job.
That's a great answer, man. One guy you're definitely getting the most out of is Chicho Arango, who we're all massive fans of on this pod. And everyone knew, I think he was a really good player at LAFC. But to me, when he was at LAFC, he was more of like guy that just finishes plays in the box, right? For me now, it's a shame, and I kind of want your opinion on this. If you didn't have the studs in Miami doing what they're doing, for me, Chicho is like runaway MVP right now. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Mm-hmm. Can you talk us through just, I think, what has gotten Chicho to me a totally new level, and how he's playing so well? Because it's not just about the goals for me. It's about everything, the build-up play, the assists, the pockets of space he finds, the way he presses. It's just incredible. It reminds me a little bit about how much he's putting, the team on his back in terms of goals and assists, kind of a little bit like Hani Mukhtar in Nashville in our early years, where he was just kind of the catalyst for everything that we did. Right. And so it's kind of twofold, right? Like how have you noticed that you can get the best out of him? And how unfortunate is it that you have Messi and Suarez just doing numbers in Miami, because he would, I think, still be a runaway MVP candidate. But also, do you think that is sustainable for him to be able to continue this red hot form throughout the whole season? Or do you think you're going to need to find other ways for other guys to step up and contribute? I know your winger, this is Carlos Gomez. Is that his name?
Andres Gomez. Yeah.
Andres Gomez. He's done really well, and he's contributing in on the stat sheet. But do you think that it's sustainable what Chicho's doing right now, Pops?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think he's in a great run of form. And so I'll just go start with like why this year. I think, last year we had Dami as the captain. And so how it is, Dax, like you're the captain of the group, and there's a guy that's super, super talented. And again, you don't have to be the most talented guy to be the captain of the club. But what was happening, I think the dynamics were really strange, where Dami wasn't getting a lot of minutes and he was still the captain of the team. And Chicho felt very, he was really cognizant of the fact that Dami is a legend here at this club and didn't want to infringe. Yeah. And so when Dami
didn't want to step on his toes.
Right. And he's such a great, Chicho, for as fantastic of a player he is, you can double that as far as human being. You'll run into very few people on this planet that are as class human being as Chicho Arango. It's unbelievable.
Interesting.
Really?
Yeah, it's unbelievable, man. And so he was, again, super respectful of Dami. And so when Dami decided to go to
does he speak English? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, he can speak it. He understands it completely.
Just doesn't do as much. Well,
I think his Colombian buddies always rib him when he speaks, and it doesn't bode well for him to have the confidence to continue doing it. But yeah, he's taking classes twice a week. A lot of the guys are. Shoot, half the team is.
It's just kind of wild. He doesn't get, I think I agree with what Dax is saying, and continue on with your answer, but he doesn't seem to get the respect that maybe he should be getting. Or not even maybe, definitely should be getting. And especially for you to double down on his character, it seems almost odd, which we've talked a lot about this in terms of small markets and why, maybe some of these clubs don't get pumped up the way that they should, especially some of these players, but Chicho being one of them.
Yeah, no, and I think to that, I think, again, the spotlight is only so big, right? And when you have Lionel Messi, who's the greatest player of all time, and then you have Luis Suarez, who's, there's not enough light to shine on Chicho. But I think, and I think those guys do for Miami what Chicho's doing for us. Like they put the team on their back, and I think great players have broad shoulders and a stealing mindset. They've been coming back from deficits and finding ways to win. Chicho does the same thing for us. And so I was saying about, when there's a void within a group setting, it's always going to be filled. Sometimes it's intentionally filled and you're deliberate about it. But if you're not deliberate about it, it's filled with something that you're going to be maybe shocked to see. And so in the preseason, I named him captain. It wasn't like it was a tough decision. But I was always curious as to how he's going to carry the armband. For some people, it's heavy. For guys like Dax, it feels like there's just a little piece of string on your arm, you know, and you just go about your work. But what it's done for Chicho is given him a platform for guys to follow his lead. And he is one of the hardest working guys in training, and he holds a standard every day in training. And one of the things that was interesting is when we got him from LA, we talked to a bunch of the coaches and stuff, and he's like, yeah, but he doesn't like to repress and press again and press again. And so we started preseason, and again, we start with how we want to defend from the front, and he was all in, and he was all in, and he shows up every day, and he's all in. And now he's got Andreas and Luna or Fidel, who, again, you have to follow his lead, right? Like, you'd be crazy not to. And so I think that's really like, he's finally, and I think Dax, you made this point about when he was in LA, you know, they had Bawanga, they had Vela, right? And so, you know, he was kind of a three-headed monster there, where here he is the guy. Yeah. And again, does a lot of stuff in the community as well. Like, he's just the top man. It's just amazing to see. It's so fun to see when great people are rewarded in the way that he's being rewarded, as far as the results going our way, him scoring all these goals and assisting. And so, is this sustainable? Again, he's a killer, man. He doesn't need the ball a whole lot. He's always in the right spots. And, you know, you would think from that perspective, if we continue to get him the ball in those areas, I think he'll be fine. Yeah. The thing that could be very good for Chicho would be guys like Crooks, Luna, Fidel to continue to start putting more points on the board from an assist perspective or goal perspective, so that now our attack becomes more multidimensional and not so predictable. But I think in the meantime, he's doing a great job of really putting the team on his back. And then from my standpoint, to have a guy that when I see Chicho play, I see a lot of myself, like the drive and the commitment, and like, definitely not the quality. I don't.
I was gonna say the goal scoring.
Yeah, definitely not the quality.
What do you mean, dude? You had the Argentinian sidewinder from top of the box.
Yeah, every now and again. I think once.
Every now and again.
But he exudes a type of, like, we want to be a tough team to play against. We want to be a dynamic team. We want to be a hard team. We want to have a mentally strong team, and he embodies all that. So for me, it's like, man, how do we just make sure that we take care of him so that he doesn't get injured, and make sure that we're always looking after his his game.
You dominated that 6 role, that defensive midfield, for your entire career, I guess a little bit at the center back position. Can you talk a little bit just about the partnership that you have in there right now in Anelli and Ojeda? Because that changed a bit for this year, and they're thriving. I've heard some of your comments in the past, both personally and professionally. How do you feel about that group, especially with the identity that you just kind of described? I think it has to come from the midfield engine, and those two guys are crushing it right now for you.
Yeah, another great question. And this is a great universe answer, right? And again, it's so interesting as coaches. And the more you think about the powers that lay beyond your ability to make decisions as a human being, going into preseason, all of us, technical staff, coaches, all the gurus that have all the answers, right? Mm-hmm. Mecca's going to be a right back, and he'll spot in the middle midfield, and we're playing house with the universe. Like, we're making predictions about the future, and we're just saying, based upon our knowledge that we have, this is what we do. So Nelson Palacio was slated to be the 6 this year, and he went with the Olympic national team. So Olympic team. And so he wasn't in for any of the preseason. Mm-hmm. So as the universe would have it, we only had 2 pivots available. It was Emeka and Ojeda. Uh-huh. And one of the things we really focused on was our build, our 3-2 build, and how mobile these two have to be, and their scanning and their body shape, and always knowing where the other pivot is. And so we went nuts in the preseason with these 2 guys. And then with every game, these guys, I was like, this is the secret sauce here. And first game of the season, we play Miami, and we played Emeka on the right, as the gurus, we all planned because we know better. And Nelson was in the middle midfield. Well, everything that we did in preseason didn't look the same without a Mecca in there.
Right.
And so the second game, we went to St. Louis and we put a Mecca in there with Brian. Completely dominated the game, it looked everything like we wanted it to look. And so now the partnership is so solidified where they're not even looking and know that they can flick the ball around the corner and the guy's going to be there. Like, it's just the relationship and the chemistry is so tight. That's with the ball. Defensively, they're both monsters and they both chew up the middle midfield and they never stop running. And so, like, we want these guys to be the engine room. And then we have Andres, Luna, Chicho, Crooks. These guys are the guys that, these guys are the piano players, man. So they're doing such a fantastic job and they're keeping the lines nice and tight defensively, offensively. They're just great conductors of moving the ball from our back line to our front line. And I couldn't be more proud of, what the job they've done, and Emeka in particular, because again, he came through the college scene. He went to Cornell, he was in the Columbus academy system. They passed on him. And he came here and you know what number he grabbed, Gargs? When he got
6?
25.
Did he really?
Grabbed the 25. And I said, dude, listen, I don't even really know you. I mean, he just came in the first couple of days. I go, I don't really know you, but you're destined for greatness, my friend. I told him. And here's another funny story. Is like my dad too. My dad, he played like a couple games last year or whatever. And my dad goes, son, you got a real player in that Anelli. And I was like, Dad, yeah, he's okay.
He's been watching. Your dad's been watching a lot of football.
He knows a lot more about the game than I do, Yeah. And so I'm like, man. And so anyways, and here's a kid like takes the information and applies it the next game. It's incredible. His ability to retain information and execute in such a short span of time, which then provokes a bigger question about how important is formal education in football. And you know what I'm saying? The ability to take information and process it with a lot of guys that come from abroad that don't have that formal education at an early age. It seems like it takes a lot longer for the decision making, for the understanding, for how they fit in the collective. But I've been saying that he's a lot like Nagby is. He's Nagby, or he has the quality where you can punch the ball into him and he is so ball secure. He is so ball secure.
Dude, what an incredible security blanket to have for the confidence, especially from a back, to be able to know that you can throw that thing in there wherever and whenever,
Anywhere.
which I know I did to you on multiple occasions. But the confidence, I mean, we had you and KB in there, which was very similar. At least the feeling was very similar.
Right.
But the great philosopher that you are, you've touched on something, I think a couple times here in this idea of youth and this becoming a young man's game. I wanted to ask your opinion on how this league, or how you in particular are thinking about the 14-year-olds that are getting signed. MLS just signed Kevin Sullivan in Philly, right? You guys, I think, have signed Axel K, right? And Xavier Gozo, 14 and 15 years old. Not expecting, I would have to think, to make first team minutes, but like as a first team coach that's now giving them minutes and giving them appearances, how do you view that? Especially without the formal education that you're talking about, and still being able to unearth talents out of this college system, but the league saying, no, you're going to sign 14-year-olds and we're going to put them on the field.
Right. Well, I think a big reason why these 14-year-olds are being signed is because of the threat of going abroad, right? Like that's the real right. thing. We want to be a league now that exports players as much as we import players. And so there's always a tough balance. And I think as a head coach, it's always the most difficult thing because, again, head coaches are judged by winning and losing, not how many players develop. I mean, look no further than Luchi Gonzalez, who sold probably over $30 million worth of players.
Yep.
Right. And that's not enough. And so, our club ethos and really, the statement that we use to make a lot of our decisions is winning together through development, right? And so we know that we have to give these young players opportunities. We have a really young roster, and so I think it's going to be more art than science. There's certain players that we, for example, our goalkeeper that we subscribe minutes to, because again, you're not going to bring in your goalkeeper for the last 20 minutes to get reps, right? So that part makes sense. I think it's always very difficult to subscribe minutes to field players. And the reason I say that is because if the first few minutes don't go well, you're not going to know what kind of player you have at the end of that game. And to keep putting them through the turmoil of consistent failures is not productive to his development, right? So even a player like Diego Luna, who last year finished the season off with a bang, for me was our most productive player going, into the playoffs last year. Last 5 games of the season, he was amazing. Yep. And then he got off to a slow start at the beginning of this season. So pulled him out, had some good chats with him about, life and all these things, and pulled him out a couple games. And then the last couple that he started, he's been on fire. And so it's always this balance of like bringing players in, but when they're failing, your job as a coach is to make sure they don't fail too hard, because then you might lose them for life. Mm-hmm. And what we want to do is bring these guys along in a way that is conducive to them, but always thinking about the team first, right? It's always the team first. And every, when you play these players, it's got to help the team. Because if I say, let's put said young player in, and all the players are looking around, it's like I'm not bringing confidence to the group, because they're looking at this young player going, how is he going to help us win? This is like a sideshow. And so it's got to be done deliberately. So it's deliberate that we play the young players. When and where is more of a feel, and just kind of looking into his eyes. Is the moment too big? When it's like, well, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to the team. It doesn't make sense to the player. But a guy like Fidel, who in his first start had 2 assists on the road in Vancouver, he's a guy that is like ice in his veins. But he's now learning the defensive side of the game. And that's the other thing I feel like bringing it up is because young players that are talented offensively only work the offensive side of the game. Now we're tasked with the first team to teach them defending in the most basic fundamental defending. I'm not talking about anything scheme like half and half, or
because they don't have to do it when they're younger because they're so talented offensively.
They're so talented. And so how long does that take? Because again, teams will take a flyer on a young player who is so talented that he's scoring goals at 15, 16, 17. Again, what is young? I don't know. Well, when Rooney came into to Everton, he was banging goals at 16. Okay, he's not young. He's young, but he's playing above his years.
For sure.
Right? Yeah. And so like every player is different. And so one 14-year-old is going to be more like a 17-year-old, where another 14-year-old might be like 12, 10, as far as, and then the other part too, and we have this conversation internally quite a bit, is how important was it for, and I always speak about myself because I lived it, going to college and being a freshman and having to carry balls and having to do all these things that I hated doing. And I was one of the better players on my club team. And I was like, now I'm getting treated like this. And it was like humble pie, right? And then you're a sophomore, you get a little bit more wiggle room, but you're still an underclassman. And you learn how to operate in a locker room. You learn how to respect your peers that have more experience. These players don't get that.
Right.
And now they're competing against guys that are 30 years old, that have 4 kids that are just as old as these kids. And we expect them to go like 1 out of every 50, maybe. But everyone else, we have to teach these guys how to act and how to behave. How you go in the locker room every morning and you say good morning to all the guys. They just go sit down in their cubicle.
Right.
And look at the phone.
And look at their phone. Yeah, they're on their own. So there's this whole thing. I think there still needs to be a lot of infrastructure in place for these players to actually thrive in. Because I think a lot of these younger players need to also have some guy that's not in the locker room to be like, hey, I had a tough practice, how do I deal with that?
Yeah.
Because their teammates, they're playing for their livelihoods, right? Coaches, we're trying to figure out exactly how we're going to go at the weekend. Who's the specific guy that's going to help this kid when it's 10 o'clock at night? He had a terrible practice. He's scared to go to practice next day because he got yelled at by an older player. How does he handle it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, by then you're like, already, I've had this before. I know how to deal with this stuff. So there's a lot that I think we have to fill in as really a nation, and helping these younger players to put them in the best positions to be successful. Because talent, I think we have. It's all the other stuff that really develops a young man into being a top player.
Yeah, I always, I always say this when people ask me about talented kids. Talent's not enough anymore. It's just not. And even back when we were coming up, it wasn't back then either. You need more. And you need more humility, more hunger, more aptitude to learn and to grow. Like I think that kind of leads into a perfect segue into a question I had for you, Pobs. And when was 2010 when the old Rapids and Gary Smith brute forced their way to an MLS Cup victory in the tundra of Toronto? Was that the
Eastern
last
Conference,
time?
right?
It's miserable. I know we all want to try to forget about that, but was that the last time as a player or coach you'd been to an MLS Cup?
Yep.
So I think a player as good as you were, and a player as successful as you, and clearly a coach as good as you are now, having not been back to MLS Cup, I think that speaks to, I think, how difficult it is in this league and how fine the margins are to actually win trophies, and which, makes teams that have sustained success in this league even more impressive. I know you can say, yes, winning trophies, that's a clear definer and marker of what constitutes a successful season. And you kind of hit on it a little bit with the youth development piece, because I think that's really important. If I was a young player and I got drafted or signed and you were my coach, I'd be buzzing off the walls, because not every coach has your mentality. What conversations do you have? And maybe you don't have to go into intimate detail, but what defines success for you as a coach, right? And I know it's winning trophies. That's great. But what else do you look at the end of the season as far as this was a successful season, this wasn't a successful season, we need to improve and make it better for next year?
That's a great question. I guess my answer would again, it wouldn't be so much about the results piece, because I think when you come to results, it's one of the benchmarks we have for ourselves is to finish top 3 in the West, and that's our top 4 in the West, and that's to host a home playoff game to give us a better chance to win a title.
Sure.
Obviously, we wanted to do better in the Open Cup, but again, I think at times. This year we had 6 injuries and 2 suspensions, and so we essentially put out the team that we could. And again, to be successful in those tournaments, you're going to have to rely on depth. So your depth has to show up.
Sure.
And I don't know that we managed the amount of, because we kept a pretty similar lineup in the first 11 games. There wasn't a whole lot of minutes to be given to a lot of the guys that weren't getting, regular game time. And then, so we've been talking about internally, how, could we have given them minutes with the Monarchs to improve their sharpness in game day? One of the things, again, the way I look at everything is that there's no magic pill in life. There's just no, you can buy players, and I think Chicho's case in point, you bring in a big time player who fits the culture, and has broad shoulders and is willing to take the burden of leading the group. That's one way to affect, your team for future success, winning trophies. But really, I look at guys like Andres Gomez, Emeka Nelly, Brian Ojeda, Brian Vera, Gavin Beavers, and these were guys that really started their careers last year, and in particular in the MLS. And the improvement that I've seen with this core group of younger players, to me, is success. Because if these guys get 1 year better, if they improve their, in possession, out of possession by 5% on either side, well, then you're setting yourself up to what real success looks like as far as winning trophies.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's like, that's really the only benchmark in professional sports. However, I know that the only way to affect that is to become, again, a better listener, be more empathetic, bring in different coaches with different ideas. And then it all just kind of comes together. Yeah. And once you have 1 year of sustained success, I think you can now start to attract the players that actually want to come to Salt Lake, that add more firepower to the group whilst these young guys are developing. And that for me is success.
Sounds a lot like good process leads to good results. That's
it. Very process driven. And that's why games, there's times when I first started coaching, I would act like a captain in the locker room, and then I realized shortly that I was scaring the players because I'm no longer wearing the jersey. I'm the coach, and I'm deciding their playing time, and I was just a real yeah, probably should have figured that out. But again, learning. And now after games, I'm always like, listen, the universe is perfect, man. It throws in all the computations into this algorithm, and it spits out the result. And sometimes you don't like it, and sometimes there's luck involved. Sometimes it could be a whole confluence of things. But there's no what has happened. It's useless sitting there and stewing in front of a group about what they need to do better. Because the first thing I say is, what could we have done better? What could I have done better? And I start with that. So again, when we lose, I'm the first one to lose because I think about processes, and I think, how do we improve? How do we take this result and improve our processes? Because if we do that, the players will improve, and we as a group will get better.
Pops, I love listening to you, bro. I really do, dude. I've been silent, and I'm like, dude, this is supposed to be a podcast, but I just love hearing your mind, how it thinks, dude. I do. These are how our phone conversations go, and you'll sit and listen to me ramble on. I'll sit and listen to your mind work, and you have a very special mind and heart because you actually care. And that was always the part, because I got to play with you in 2017. Your heart was bigger than your mind, and your mind is big. You have a huge ability to think outside the box, but your heart is even bigger, and you actually do care about these kids, and it can sometimes drive you crazy, I'm sure. Yeah. Let me I just wanted to give you that compliment, dude.
Yeah, thanks, Gordo, dude. That's
I really do.
Again, I love it means a lot, because I think, again, I think about this from like a profession standpoint, and I'm like, how cheap is it if I'm only caring about results? And then not so cheap, because again, if you're process oriented and you take the human being into consideration first, because before you can reach a player, you have to touch the soul of the human being. It's impossible to reach a player. It's impossible. You got to connect. You got to be like, dude, I've been in your shoes, bro. I've been 17, been swimming underwater. I know what you're going through. Listen, we're going to bring you along in a way that's going to be awesome. You just got to trust me that I've been here, and we have a great staff, and we're going to, so that's why I live by myself. My family's in Colorado. I live not too far from you. It's like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for the money? Am I doing this just to put a label by my name? Or am I trying to help the generation after me to learn, hopefully, some of the things that life can all teach us, and I can help them through. So a lot like the shaman with ayahuasca, we all need a spiritual leader to help us along the way. And if I can do that, then I feel like I'm actually giving back to the game. Because again, not everyone's going to be the MLS best, but people are going to have kids. And people are going to have relationships, and people and all these things that we learn as a group through the game of football is the best teacher for me. So thanks.
I think that, we talked about the youth system, and if you should go around and talk to youth coaches, and we should throw this out to every youth club, because more of this just need for the kid themselves should be more prevalent.
Gordo, we live in crazy times right now. What are things looking like in the real estate market?
Oh, Dax, you know that rates are always going to be the best with Synergy One lending, and those are always going to fluctuate. But one thing that never fluctuates, that's the service you get with Erin from Fikes Realty Group. She is the #1 agent I will refer all my clients to. She handles all the obstacles up front, really takes the stress out of any transaction and move that you have. Check out my girl, Erin Mishu with Fikes Realty Group at majorleague-realestate.com.
Let me switch gears to a little funner side here. So we're talking a lot about the universe, right? You're a universe guy. And I'm not going to put myself in your category. We both have had different looks, What is the universe more likely to bring back? The mustache or the dreads? And which defines you more?
That's a great question. Well, seeing that I just saw the back of my head has a bald spot, being a crappy dread head. You know what I mean? So the mustache grows effortlessly. So I would say the mustache probably, and it'd take away from that glaring bald spot in the back of my head.
How did you grow? How did you grow the little things where you twisted it? I'm trying to do that right now.
Yeah, all you gotta do is just keep twisting them. And do you have mustache? Do you have mustache wax?
I need some. You got to school me on this stuff, dude.
Yeah. You just got to keep growing it. Don't clip those ends.
Okay.
Don't clip those ends.
All right.
Yeah, it's going to look like a caterpillar that just walked out of the shower. And if it looks like that, then you got that. Then you can twist it up.
Caterpillar that
it looks great, by the way. Actually, you're a natural with a mustache.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything
his wife hates hearing you say
from
that.
his nose. That's old Gordo. I got one for you, Pops. We play a little start, bench, cut, and we'll finish with this. We got two for you. So start, bench, cut. You familiar with the game? Your playing career, Miami, Colorado, and the Galaxy as clubs. You got to start one, bench one, and cut one.
Here's the thing.
He's cruel.
Here's the thing. Is every station I learned so much about myself. Like every station had a growth period for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You're not getting out of the question though.
Yeah, you know? I know. You're not. You can't wiggle out of this.
I'm gonna go start Colorado.
Okay.
I'm gonna bench Miami, and I'm gonna cut LA because what I learned in LA has little to do with football. Is more of enjoyment of life and the beauty that exists in LA and the opportunities that exist in LA and the people, how closely you're connected to everyone in LA. So I would say I would
think that's a good answer.
I heard a lot of great stories from you about your time in Miami. Obviously, when we shared the locker room together, we were in Colorado. So I was an active participant in the developing of the stories that were in Colorado, but I got to listen to what your life was like in Miami. Why are you starting Colorado and benching Miami and vice versa?
Again, I can't remove real life from sports. So like my kids were born in Colorado. I went to my first World Cup coming to Colorado. There's just too many, and then won an MLS Cup in Colorado. So there's just too many great experiences that I wouldn't have had.
Yeah.
Where in Miami, I was just a kid, man. I was just again dreads. Like I mean, it's great. It's unbelievable to go back and think about it. And you're asking this question. It's like, man, it's like nobody knows what they're doing until they go through it. Like they're
totally.
We're all
Which
faking
is almost
it.
a bit unfair, isn't it? It seems a little unfair. It seems a little unfair because you acquire all this knowledge, or in essence, in theory, you should acquire knowledge from some of your experiences, and it's tough that you have the ability to now be reflective and be like, oh man, I picked this up. So you add it on, but you never really know what you're getting into, do we? I mean, we don't.
Never.
Each step.
Never. That's the beauty of life, man. If it was predictable, everyone wants predictability, but you know how boring life would be? Like curveballs is what makes life go around, man. And it makes you adapt and it makes you stronger mentally. And it just, I'm telling you, I'm in this place now where it's like, flip this thing on its head and let's go, man. I'm up for another journey, dude. Whatever it is, dude, let's go. It's just, again, moving away from the family was the hardest thing. But once you get over that, if you can get over that, I mean, what can't you get over, man? Like,
what
life
can't you get over?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful position to be in. I'm going to ask you the tough one now. So I'll let you pick because you have two very significant positions in your career, both as a player, as a coach. So do you want the Colorado Rapids or do you want Real Salt Lake? And I have a couple for you on either side. You get to pick.
Let's go Real Salt Lake because that's more present.
All right, good. I like that because this one's actually tougher. Okay. Start, bench, cut. Javier Morales Kyle Beckerman, Nick Rimando.
Oh,
Oh,
you are. He's a mean guy, dude.
That's tough.
Yeah, dude. That's not. I mean,
That's
I don't
hard.
know if that's cool.
You've been getting a bunch of layups, man. You're Mr. Politician on this.
We all had to do it, Pops. We all had to.
I'm putting you in the hot seat, pal.
Okay. I'll start. Kyle
You said
Beckerman.
you wanted to walk through pain.
Yeah, let's go. I'll start Kyle Beckerman. I'll bench Nick Rimando, and I'll cut Javi.
Oof.
I love it. Tough.
He's also the only one in the in Salt Lake's Ring of Honor or whatever they call it. Javi, I think Javi is. Javi and Christ. I don't think Rimando and Kyle have been added in yet.
Speaking of universe, the universe just introduced some wild into the equation. Come here, bud. Say hi to Pablo.
The fellas, the boys.
What's up, guys?
The McCarty boys have just taken over. Thank God
That's
we got
amazing.
through all that. Yeah. Is this my clone or what?
Oh my God.
Oh,
he's gonna be a ladies' man. That one.
Yeah, dude. Pops, I gotta say, it's been an absolutely fantastic having you on. I really appreciate the honesty and the willingness to go deeper and not just toss off sometimes difficult questions as, a stock answer. And I appreciate so much, the openness and the willingness. Oh yes, I know. So thank you, man. Thank you for coming on.
Awesome, Dax.
We really
it's great catching up. It's been a minute, man. It's great.
It has. It has. I always think about with us MLS Cup 2010. Yeah, Owen, say hi. Which broke my heart. And I always say, I feel like I've had a pretty good career. And I've been to an MLS Cup final one time and a US Open Cup final one time. And losing those, it's like young kids, if I could tell them, you think you're going to get back to finals once you get there all the time. And it just doesn't happen for even the greatest players and the best teams. And for me, losing that final, man, it was a really painful moment, but a great learning experience. I think it made me appreciate, winning supporter shields and the Gold Cup more. Cause it's like, when are you going to get back to one of these? You know what I mean? So that moment for me, it really sticks out. I always had a good laugh and some good banter with Gary Smith in Nashville about it. And even his whole staff, right? Like Guppy was, Brett Jacobs. And so I felt like you guys caught lightning in a bottle that year and just took off in the playoffs, right? And then also when you coached me in the All-Star game, I thought that was hilarious. That was fantastic. Like what a weird All-Star game playing top in Denver.
I didn't know what the hell I was doing, dude.
I know that was the best part.
Kaká was on the team. David V. I'm like, what am I going to tell these guys, dude? Like,
yeah, I know. I remember you started me as the defensive midfielder in that game, and I really appreciated it. But then we have like all these luxury players on the field. You were just like, Dax, I'm praying for you, buddy.
Dude, that's the flaw of that game. Everyone wants to have all the attacking players. I'm saying, all right, well, how are we going to win the ball back?
Yeah.
It's crazy. No, Dax, yeah, and again, dude, super stoked for you in the career that you're having, and what you've done, all along the way, man. Just again, like there's been a couple times that your name's come up, and I've tried to bring you on board, and for whatever reason, it hasn't, man. But I think you've made a name for yourself as a top. You and Beckerman, top midfielder in this league, like American heroes, man. So
I appreciate it, man. That means a lot coming from you, dude. I really appreciate it. And, I gotta say, now that Gordo hopped off, thank God, the pod got much better. I think now maybe we have a weekly episode. Pops can be like our Aaron Rodgers Tuesday. How about that?
Let's go. Let's go.
Dude, we really appreciate it, man.
Always welcome.
Awesome, guys. So great talking to you guys. Garg's always a pleasure, my friend.